The twin suns of Varela Prime burned high above the alien marketplace, filling the air with shimmering heat. The smell of strange spices and smoke mixed with the stench of unwashed bodies. Merchants shouted in dozens of languages, waving their goods to passing buyers, and in the center of it all stood a raised metal platform. The auction stage. Chains rattled as a young alien girl was pushed forward by two guards. She stumbled, nearly falling, her bare feet scraping against the hot metal floor. Gasps and laughter rippled through the crowd when they saw her. She had no clothes, only thin iron cuffs on her wrists and ankles. Her skin was pale lavender, marked by bruises and dirt. Her long silver hair fell over her shoulders, but not enough to hide her shame. The auctioneer, a tall insectoid creature, with glittering black eyes, raised his voice. Lot number 72, female, age 16 cycles. Healthy, strong, and obedient. His words were cold, as if describing an object. The girl tried to cover herself, folding her arms, but the crowd only laughed louder. Some shouted rude words. Others called out offers before the bidding even began. She kept her head down, staring at the floor. Her heart pounded. Every sound around her felt sharp. She remembered the dark cell she had been in the night before. The guards had told her she would be sold to the highest bidder. She had thought about running, but where could she go? This spaceport was a maze of metal and cruelty. There was no escape from the edge of the crowd. A tall human man stood watching. He wore a long black coat and a weathered hat that shadowed his face. His eyes were hidden, but his jaw was tense. He had seen auctions before, slaves, machines, weapons, but never something that made his chest feel this heavy. The auctioneer's voice boomed again. Starting bid. 500 credits. Hands shot up and numbers flew. 600, 700, 900. The girl's breath came faster. She knew the higher the price, the worse the fate. Rich buyers often wanted more than labor. She bit her lips so hard it bled, trying not to cry. The human watched as the bids climbed past 1,000. His hand clenched into a fist. He could see her shaking, could see the way she tried to hide herself from the eyes crawling over her skin. Something inside him moved in anger. It was the kind of fury that made him step forward before thinking 2,000. His voice cut through the noise. The crowd turned to look, surprised. A human? They rarely took part in such sales. The auctioneer paused, Case's mandibles twitching. Well, a generous offer from an outsider, he said with mock amusement. Do I hear higher? A large reptilian bidder snarled, 2,500. Without hesitation, the human called 3,000. Murmurs swept the crowd. The reptilian growled, glaring at him, but said nothing more. The auctioneer's black eyes gleamed. 3,000 credits, going once, going twice. Sold. The metal gavel slammed against the podium. The girl flinched at the sound. The guards moved to unhook her chains from the stage. The human stepped forward, his boots clanging against the metal floor. He pulled off his long coat and draped it. Around her shoulders, the fabric was heavy and warm, smelling faintly of leather and something clean. The girl froze, her wide eyes looking up at him. No one had ever done that before. No one had cared. Let's go, he said quietly, his voice low enough for her alone. She didn't move at first, unsure if it was real, but his hand was steady on her shoulder, guiding her down from the stage. The crowd watched in silence now. Some whispered, some frowned. Others simply stared as the human led her away. The auctioneer counted his credits, satisfied. The reptilian bidder spat on the ground, angry at losing, but no one stopped the human. They passed through the rows of stalls, the noise of the market fading behind them. The girl kept the coat wrapped tight, her fingers clutching the fabric. Every step felt strange, like she was walking in a dream. She still didn't know his name or why he had bought her. But for the first time in years, the burning shame on her skin felt covered. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a small spark of something she thought was gone began to flicker. Hope. The metal streets of the market were crowded as the human led the girl away from the auction stage. The coat hung loosely over her small frame, brushing against her bare legs with every step. She kept glancing around, expecting someone to stop them. Her whole life had taught her that kindness was only a trick. No one ever helped without wanting something back. The human moved with quiet confidence. He didn't push her or pull her, roughly like the guards had. Instead, his hand stayed gently at her shoulder, guiding her through the maze of stalls and shouting merchants. When alien eyes followed them, he stared back until they looked away. Finally, they reached a shadowed alley at the edge of the market. Here, the noise faded and the smell of roasted meat was replaced by the metallic scent of old machinery. The girl stopped walking, pulling the coat tighter. Her voice was soft and unsure. Why? Why did you buy me? He turned to face her, pulling back the brim of his hat. For the first time, she saw his eyes sharp, gray and steady. Because you didn't belong there, he said simply. Because no one should be sold like that. Her brow furrowed. That's not how the galaxy works, she whispered, almost to herself. He gave a small, humorless smile. Then maybe the galaxy needs changing. A sudden shout came from behind them. The reptilian bidder from the auction was pushing through. The crowd with 2 armed guards. You human thief. That female was mine. The alien roared. The human's hand slipped to his hip, resting near a holstered blaster. She was never yours. He said evenly. You want to fight? We can settle it now. The reptilian hesitated, scanning the human stance. It was clear this was not a man who bluffed. With a hiss, the alien spat on the ground and backed away. This isn't over, he snarled before disappearing into the crowd. The girl stared at the human, surprised. You would fight for me. He looked at her as if the question itself was strange. Of course, he said. That's what people do when someone's in trouble. He turned and kept walking, and after a moment, she followed. They reached the edge of the spaceport, where the ground curved into a docking bay. Dozens of ships stood in their landing zones, some small and sleek, others heavy and armored. He led her to a narrow freighter with faded white paint and a few scorch marks on the hull. The name Iron. Wind was barely visible along the side. As they stepped inside, the smell changed clean metal, warm air, and the faint scent of coffee. The door closed behind them with a hiss, cutting off the chaos of the market. For the first time in years, she felt safe, not entirely, but enough to loosen her grip on the coat. He set a small bundle of fabric on a seat. Clothes, he said. They should fit you. She looked at him, unsure if it was another test, but he only stepped away to the ship's controls, giving her privacy. A few minutes later, she emerged wearing a simple gray shirt and soft pants. They were loose but warm, and she almost didn't recognize herself in them. The human glanced over his shoulder, nodding. Better. He said, now sit. You need food. She hesitated again before slowly taking a seat. He placed a tray in front of her. Bread, a small bowl of stew, and a cup of water. She looked at it as if it might vanish. Eat, he encouraged. It's not poisoned. If that's what you're thinking. Her hands trembled as she picked up the bread. The first bite was small, cautious. When nothing bad happened, she took another, then another. The human watched quietly, saying nothing until she was finished. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. You don't even know my name. He leaned back in his chair. Then tell me. She hesitated before whispering Leora. Leora, he repeated, as if testing the sound. I'm Kane. They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the ship's systems filling the space. Finally, Kane stood. We'll leave in an hour, he said, once we're in hyperspace. We'll talk about where you want to go. Her stomach tightened at the thought. Where could she go? She had no family, no home, no one waiting. She didn't answer, and Kane didn't push her. Instead, he turned to the control panel and began preparing the ship for departure. Outside, the docking bay lights shifted from red to green. Soon, the iron wind would rise into the skies above Varela Prime, and Leora's life, the one she had known, would be gone forever, somewhere deep inside. Fear and hope battled for space, but for now she kept her eyes on Kane, wondering why a stranger would risk so much for someone like her. The docking clamps released with a deep metallic thud. Kane's hands moved steadily over the controls as the iron wind lifted off from the landing pad. Through the small round window, Leora saw the sprawling market grow smaller, the shouting merchants fading into silence. The heavy air of Varela Prime gave way to the black sea of space. Stars stretched out in every direction, bright and endless. She sat in the co-pilot's seat, her legs drawn up, the coat still wrapped around her, even though she now wore clothes beneath it. The hum of the ship felt strange but comforting. Kane didn't speak much, his eyes fixed on the flight path. When they cleared the planet's gravity well, he pushed a lever forward. The stars blurred, and in a heartbeat, they were in hyperspace. Leora had never seen it before. The swirling tunnel of blue and white light, her mouth opened slightly in awe. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Kane glanced at her, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Better than the auction stage," he said. She gave a small nod, though the memory still made her chest tighten. For a while, they sat in silence, the ship's quiet hum filling the space between them. Leora kept her eyes on the lights outside, afraid that if she blinked, they might vanish. Finally, she asked, "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," Kane replied, "out past the trade sectors. There's a station where no one cares who you used to be." Her fingers gripped the coat tighter. "And after that, that's up to you," he said. "I can drop you there, or you can stay on as part of my crew." Her eyes flickered with confusion. "Crew? I don't know how to do anything." Kane shrugged. "You'll learn. Everyone starts somewhere." A faint shiver ran through her, not from fear, but from the strangeness of the words. No one had ever spoken to her like she had a choice. Every path in her life had been decided for her. Now, suddenly, there was a fork in the road, and she didn't know which way to step. The ship's console beeped softly, drawing Kane's attention. He adjusted a few controls, his jaw tightening. "What is it?" Leora asked. "Nothing yet," he said. "But we might have company." Her stomach dropped from the auction. "Maybe," he said. "There are people who don't like losing their merchandise." Leora's chest tightened at the word. Merchandise. That was what she had been to them. A thing, not a person. The thought made her curl deeper into the coat. Kane noticed but didn't comment. Instead, he said, "You should rest. There's a cabin down the hall." "It's yours now." She blinked. "Mine?" He gave a short nod. "Yes. No locks, no chains. Just a bed and some space for your things." The words felt like a dream. She rose slowly and followed the narrow corridor, her bare feet padding on the metal floor. The cabin was small, just a bed, a small shelf, and a round window showing the swirling hyperspace outside. To her, it was more than she had ever hoped for. She sat on the bed, running her fingers over the blanket. It was soft, clean, and smelled faintly of soap. She lay back, staring at the ceiling for the first time in years. She wasn't sleeping on cold stone or hard metal. Her eyes closed before she realized she was drifting off. When she woke, the cabin was dim, the blue glow from hyperspace casting shifting shadows. For a moment, she forgot where she was, panic tightening her throat. Then she remembered the human. The ship, the coat still draped over her. She sat up, listening. The hum of the engines was steady. But somewhere deeper in the ship, she heard Kane moving. She stepped out into the corridor, following the sound. He was in the small galley, leaning Over a map on the table, when he saw her, he nodded toward the seat across from him. Couldn't sleep. He asked, "Not for long," she admitted. "Dreams." "Memories," she said quietly. He didn't press her for details. Instead, he slid a cup of warm tea toward her drink. "It helps," as she sipped. Her eyes wandered over the map. Lines and dots marked trade routes, star systems, and warning zones. One sector was marked in red. "What's that?" she asked. Kane's gaze followed hers. "That's trouble," he said. "Pirate territory. We'll be going around it." A flicker of fear crossed her mind. "And if they find us anyway?" Kane's expression didn't change. "Then I make sure they regret it." She studied him for a moment. There was something steady about him, like he had been through worse and come out stronger. For reasons she didn't understand, that thought made her feel safer. She didn't know it yet. But this journey away from Varela Prime was not the end of her troubles. It was only the first step into something bigger. Something far more dangerous. And somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, someone was already hunting for her. The iron wind drifted through hyperspace like a small shadow in an endless ocean. Leora sat in her cabin by the round window. Watching the swirling blue light, it was peaceful, but her thoughts were anything but. Every time she closed her eyes, memories clawed their way back. The smell of burning metal, the sound of screaming, the cold hands dragging her away. She remembered her homeworld, Alvera. It was a quiet place of violet skies and silver leaf trees. Her people lived in small villages, working the fields and fishing the crystal rivers. Leora had been 12 when the sky filled with fire. The raiders came without warning, ships shaped like blades. Cutting through the clouds, they rained fire on the homes. Turning the silver leaves into ash, she had tried to run with her mother. But the ground shook when one of the ships landed. Strange armored figures poured out, their faces hidden behind black masks. One of them grabbed her, tearing her from her mother's hands. She still remembered her mother's scream. The last time she saw her was through the bars of a transport cage. A flash of light, then nothing. The ship took off, and her home was gone. From that day, her life became a chain of cages. She was sold from one owner to another, each worse than the last. Some made her work until her hands bled. Others made her stand silent for hours, like she was a decoration. She learned quickly that speaking brought pain. Hope was something she buried deep, because hope only hurt when it died. The worst was the market on Dresker Station. It was there she first learned what it meant to be sold to buyers who didn't care if she lived through the night. She kept her eyes down, never meeting anyone's gaze. The fewer they noticed her, the less they hurt her. But no matter how small, she tried to make herself someone always noticed. She was passed from place to place until she ended up in the hands of the slavers on Varela Prime. They told her she would be part of their special auction. She didn't need to ask what. That meant she had seen it before. She had seen girls and boys stripped of dignity and paraded before buyers. And now it was her turn. Leora's fingers tightened on the coat around her shoulders. The memory made her stomach twist. She didn't even realize Kane had stepped into the doorway until he spoke. "You're quiet," he said, leaning against the frame. She turned her head slightly. "I was remembering," she whispered. Kane walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. "Bad memories. All of them." She said. He didn't interrupt, didn't try to tell her to forget. Instead, he asked, "How long?" "For years," she said, her voice small. "For years, since Alvara burned." Kane's jaw tightened. He had heard stories of the raids on Alvara, but hearing it from her made it real. He thought about the fire in her eyes during the auction. Even in chains, she had refused to look completely broken, and now he understood why. "You're not there anymore," he said quietly. "They can't touch you here." She shook her head. "They'll find me. They always do." "Not this time," he said firmly. She looked at him. searching for a lie in his eyes, but found none. The ship shuddered slightly as it exited hyperspace. Through the window, the stars returned, scattered like diamonds on black velvet. Kane stood and moved to the door. "Come to the cockpit." "We're close." Leora followed, the floor humming under her feet. In the cockpit, the view opened wide, a cluster of glowing space stations connected by long metal bridges. Freighters and small ships moved between them like insects between flowers. "That's Haven Reach," Kane said. "A place where no one asks questions, and slavers get shot on sight." Her chest tightened at the thought of stepping into a place where she wouldn't be hunted, but even as the station grew closer, a shadow still lingered in her mind, somewhere out there. The ones who had taken her were still alive. She didn't know their names or their faces, but she remembered their masks, their voices. And she knew deep down that one day she might have to face them again. Kane didn't know it yet. But Leora's past was not just a memory. It was a thread that stretched forward, tangled with danger that had yet to come. And while the iron wind glided toward Haven Reach, far behind them, another ship was already tracking their trail. Its captain had seen Kane's bid at the auction, and he wanted back what he believed was his property. The hunt had already begun. The iron wind glided toward Haven Reach, the station's silver towers glowing against the black of space. Leora sat in the co-pilot's seat, her eyes fixed on the lights ahead. She tried to imagine what life would be like without chains, without fear, but even as she thought of safety, something deep in her chest refused to relax. Kane's hands rested on the controls, but his gaze kept flicking to the sensor screen. The soft, rhythmic beeps of the scanner filled the air. Every few seconds, one of the green dots shifted position. It was normal to have ships moving in nearby space, but one dot stayed exactly the same distance behind them. It had been there for over an hour. "You see it too, right?" Kane asked without looking at her. Leora leaned closer, nodding slowly. "They're following us," she said quietly. Kane's jaw tightened. "Yeah, and I've got a pretty good guess who it is." A flash of memory hit her. The reptilian. Bitter from the auction, his glare, his promise that it wasn't over. Her stomach turned cold. "Oh, take me back," she whispered. "Not while I'm breathing," Kane replied, his voice firm. He adjusted the controls, steering the iron wind off the direct path to Haven Reach. The stars shifted, and the blue-white glow of a nearby asteroid field began to fill the viewport. "If they want to follow us, let's see if they're willing to do it through here," Kane muttered. Leora gripped the armrest as the ship tilted, weaving between massive chunks of spinning rock. Some were small as a chair, others the size of a city block. The sensors beeped faster now, warning of collision risks behind them. The shadowing ship followed, its pilots skilled enough to keep up. "They're not stopping," Leora said, her voice trembling. Kane's fingers danced over the controls. "No," which means they're serious. A sudden burst of static filled the cockpit speakers, followed by a deep, growling voice. "Human, you have something that belongs to me." Kane didn't answer. "Give her back, and I might let you live," the voice continued. Kane's lips curved into a humorless smile. "You talk too much," he said, and switched the com off. The next second, a bright red beam of plasma streaked past the viewport. "They're firing." Leora gasped. Kane yanked the ship sideways, the iron wind rolling sharply to avoid the shot. "They'll try to disable us, not destroy us," Kane said. "They want you alive." The words made her skin crawl. Another shot hit the ship's shields, making the hull shudder. The lights flickered, and the sensor screen flashed with warning symbols. "Kane," she started, but he cut her off. "Go to the engine room. Stay low. If they board us, you find something to hit them with." Her breath caught. "You think they'll get on the ship?" "Not if I can help it," Kane said, his voice steady but sharp. He pushed the throttle forward. The iron wind surging deeper into the asteroid field. Rocks scraped against the shields, sparks lighting up the edges of the viewport behind them. The pursuing ship didn't hesitate. It fired again. One blast striking close enough to rattle every bolt in the cockpit. Kane swore under his breath, flipping a switch to reroute power to the shields. "They can't keep firing forever," he muttered. "Their weapons will overheat." But even as he said it, another voice crackled over the comm. This one was colder, quieter. "You can't run forever." "Kane, she's worth more than your life." Leora froze at the sound. She didn't recognize the voice. But the tone made her blood run cold. Kane's eyes flicked toward her. "They're trying to scare you. Don't let them." The ship jolted violently as another hit slammed into the rear shields. Alarms wailed, and Kane's console flashed a bright red warning. "Shield failure imminent. Time to end this," Kane growled. He pulled a lever, and the ship's wings shifted, revealing a set of hidden cannons. A targeting reticle appeared on the viewport, locking on to the pursuing ship. "Hold on," Kane warned. The iron wind spun sharply, flipping to face the enemy head-on. In the same breath, Kane fired. Twin streams of plasma tore through the darkness. Slamming into the pursuer's hull, the enemy ship veered sideways. Smoke and fire spilling from one of its engines. "They're still moving." Leora said. Kane gritted his teeth. "Yeah, but not for long." He fired again, and this time, the blast struck something vital. The enemy ship spun out of control, disappearing behind an asteroid. For a long moment, only the hum of the engines filled the cockpit, then the sensors showed the dot falling behind. Its signal growing weaker. "They're retreating," Kane said finally. Leora exhaled, her hands still gripping the armrest so hard her knuckles were white. "Will they come back?" she asked. Kane didn't sugarcoat it, probably. "But next time, I'll be ready." As the iron wind cleared the asteroid field and Haven Reach came back into view, Leora sat silently. Her heart was still racing. But there was something else inside her now, a spark of defiance they had chased. Her fired on her, tried to take her back, but they had failed. And maybe, just maybe, they would fail again. The iron wind docked at Haven Reach, its hull still carrying the scorch marks from the chase. The air inside the station was warm and faintly metallic, the sound of hundreds of voices echoing through the open docking bay. Kane stepped down first, scanning the crowd with sharp, practiced eyes. Leora followed, her hands buried deep in the pockets of the coat he had given her. The station was different from Virella Prime. Here, no one shouted bids for living beings. No one looked at her like she was merchandise. Yet, she couldn't relax. She kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see the reptilian bidder step out of the shadows. Kane noticed but said nothing. He led her through winding metal corridors to a small repair shop tucked between two freight hangars. Inside, an old mechanic with a arm nodded in greeting. "Kane, still flying that rust bucket?" the man said. Kane smirked. "She's faster than she looks. But I need new shield emitters." While the two men talked, Leora's gaze wandered to a rack of tools along the wall. Her eyes paused on a small, heavy wrench, the kind that could easily break a skull if swung hard enough. She picked it up. Slowly, testing its weight in her hands, it felt solid, reassuring. Kane noticed her holding it. "Thinking of fixing the ship yourself?" he asked with a hint of humor. Leora shook her head. "No, I was thinking. If they come back," Kane's smile faded. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "If they come back, you won't just be hiding this time. You fight, you run, you survive. Understand?" She nodded, her fingers tightening on the wrench. They spent the next few hours gathering supplies, food, parts for the ship, a small med kit. Kane moved quickly, never staying in one place for too long. He knew Haven Reach was safer than most places. But no place was completely safe by the time they returned to the Iron Wind. The station's artificial lights had shifted to evening mode, casting a dim golden glow over the hangar. Kane began installing the new shield emitters while Leora stored the supplies. She kept glancing toward the docking bay doors, her grip on the wrench never loosening. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat in her cabin, staring out the small round window at the stars beyond the station walls. Somewhere out there, the ones who wanted her were still moving, still hunting. The thought made her chest tighten, but this time, fear wasn't the only thing she felt. Anger burned quietly inside her. She was tired of being powerless, tired of waiting for someone else to save her. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft hiss of the docking bay doors opening. It was almost silent, too quiet for normal traffic. She froze, listening. Then she heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Moving toward the Iron Wind, she grabbed the wrench and slipped out of her cabin. The main lights of the ship were off, leaving only the faint glow of emergency strips along the floor. Shadows moved near the cargo hold, tall, armed figures. The pirates had found them. One of them stepped inside, scanning the interior with a glowing visor. Leora pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding. She could run back to her cabin, lock the door, and hide. But Kane's words came back to her. You fight. You run. You survive. The pirate turned his back to her, moving toward the corridor. She stepped forward silently, raised the wrench, and swung with all her strength. The metal connected with a sickening crack, and the pirate crumpled to the floor without a sound. Another pirate spun around, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, Kane burst in from the cockpit. Blaster in hand, a shot rang out, and the second pirate fell. Kane. Leora shouted. He looked at her, his eyes flicking to the unconscious pirate at her feet. You did that? He asked. She nodded, her breath still ragged. Good, he said simply, tossing her a smaller blaster. Next time, you'll use this, quieter and faster. But the fight wasn't over. The sound of boots echoed from outside. More were coming. Kane sealed the ship's doors and shouted, Get to the cockpit! They ran together, the hum of the engines building as Kane brought the ship to life. Blaster fire struck the hull, making the metal ring like a drum. The Iron Wind lifted, breaking free from the docking clamps. A pair of small pirate ships chased them into open space. This time, Leora didn't hide. She strapped into the co-pilot's seat, the blaster resting in her hands. Her fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She had fought back once, and she would do it again if she had to. Kane glanced at her briefly, a faint look of pride in his eyes. Not bad for your first fight, he said. She gave a small, determined nod. This won't be my last. And somewhere deep inside, Leora knew that was true. The girl who had stood trembling on an auction stage was gone. In her place was someone who could stand up, fight, and survive, no matter who came for her next. The pirate ships fell away into the black, their engines flickering as they turned back. The Iron Wind soared into open space, leaving Haven Reach far behind for a long time. Only the soft hum of the engines filled the cockpit. Leora sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands still wrapped around the small blaster Kane had given her. Her pulse was slowly returning to normal, but her mind was racing. Kane leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning the navigation display. We're clear. For now, he said. The words for now echoed in her head. The threat was gone, but not forever. Somewhere out there, others would hear about the girl who escaped from the auction. They would come looking, but tonight, the stars were peaceful. Leora let herself breathe. Her gaze drifted to the swirling lights of a distant nebula. Colors dancing like a living painting. She had never noticed how beautiful space could be before. Maybe it was because she had never been free enough to look. Hours later, they reached a small outpost at the edge of a quiet system. It was nothing like the crowded markets of Virella Prime or the looming towers of Havenreach. Just a cluster of metal domes and docking bays surrounded by fields of silver dust. Kane brought the iron wind down gently, the landing pads creaking under the ship's weight. "This place is called Dallin's Rest," Kane said, powering down the engines. "It's not much, but no one here asks questions, and no one here sells people." Leora followed him down the ramp, her boots crunching softly in the dust. The air was cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of something sweet, maybe flowers. It felt almost unreal. The settlement was quiet. A few people moving between buildings, their faces calm and unhurried. No one stared at her, no one whispered, for the first time in years. She felt invisible in a good way. Kane led her to a small building near the edge of the settlement. Inside was a single room with a bed, a table, and a small window looking out at the silver fields. "This could be yours," Kane said. Leora blinked. "Mine?" He nodded. "You can stay here. Live your life. No chains, no orders." She stood in the center of the room, staring at the bed. The idea of having a place of her own was both thrilling and terrifying. After a long silence, she turned to him. "What about you?" "I'll keep flying," Kane said. "There's always work out there, and someone always needs help." Her chest tightened. "So this is goodbye?" "Not unless you want it to be," Kane replied. "You can stay here, or you can come with me. It's your choice now." Her mind spun. She could stay, be safe, start fresh, maybe even forget the past. But another part of her knew she wasn't ready to stop moving. She had fought, she had survived, and she had learned that she could stand up for herself. If she stayed here, the galaxy would go on without her. If she went with Kane, there would be danger, but also purpose. She looked at him, her decision forming in her eyes before she spoke. "I'm coming with you." Kane studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Then you're not just a passenger anymore. Your crew." The next morning, they prepared the Iron Wind for departure. Leora moved through the ship with a new kind of confidence, checking storage crates and organizing supplies. The coat was still draped over her shoulders, but now it was less about hiding and more about remembering. Remembering the day everything changed as the engines roared to life. She took her place in the co-pilot seat. The silver fields of Dallin's Rest stretched out below them. Kane glanced at her. "Ready?" She nodded. Always, the ship lifted, breaking through the thin atmosphere. The stars opened up before them, endless and waiting. Leora felt the familiar mix of fear and excitement. The difference now was that the fear no longer held her down. She didn't know where their next stop would be, or who they might face. But she knew one thing. She would never go back to the girl who stood on an auction stage with her head down. She had fought. She had chosen her own path, and for the first time the future belonged to her, somewhere in the vastness ahead. Danger was still waiting, but so were possibilities. And as the Iron Wind disappeared into the starlit horizon, Leora felt the weight of her past grow lighter. The galaxy was wide, and she was finally free to walk or run anywhere she wanted.